This week we have one of the best debuts in Diamondbacks history. The question, is Geraldo Perdomo making a case to be the best shortstop in baseball? And is Andrew Saalfrank the solution to the Dbacks closer conundrum? We're answering all of these and more right now on the Dbacks podcast.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send them all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Torey Lavello, and you're listening to the Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, where we bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk from across the pond here in London. We're proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. And this week we've got some big questions to ask and answer about two guys who seem like they might never be quite the first names on the team sheet, but now are having their moments in the sun. I'm talking Geraldo Perdomo, who through August, as I record this, sits at a 1,007 OPS through his last 30, with the same amounts of RBIs as strikeouts in that time, and is of course the Diamondbacks de facto captain at shortstop, and relief pitcher Andrew Saalfrank, who has made a triumphant return to the roster following suspension after we last saw him as part of the Diamondbacks bullpen in the 2023 postseason. Now, this episode comes after the conclusion of a hard-fought series split against the best team in baseball in the Milwaukee Brewers on the road, who currently hold a 5-game lead over the Cubs in the NL Central. It's the start of the last month of the regular season for the Diamondbacks, and the first series has been a tough road trip for the Diamondbacks. After today's game, they're headed to the Dodgers to close out August before they attempt to stage an admittedly unlikely surge to a wild card spot. Now, if that's going to happen with this hastily reassembled team, it's going to take more than that core backbone of guys to make it happen. And everyone in baseball knows that the threat that Corbin or, Ketel Marte carry when they step into the batter's box. But since the Snakes have dealt Merrill Kelly, Josh Naylor, Eugenio Suarez, and Shelby Miller at the deadline, we've seen a number of prospects, AAA farmhands, and free agents turn out in Snakes colors, and it's a no-brainer to blood some of these guys right now, getting them valuable major league experience, but there are going to be ups and downs to any stint in the big leagues, and that's when you really need guys who perhaps previously were a bit unsung heroes to step up. This is, of course, where Geraldo Perdomo has really come into his own. We as Diamondbacks fans know Domo's a great guy to have in the organization. Everybody loves him. People won't stop singing his praises. Torey, his teammates, he is getting captain shouts, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. But I think given how productive he has been at the plate and on the diamond, it's nice to see him getting a little bit of the limelight. Since he came back up to the Diamondbacks in 2021, his switch-hitting batting WAR has been a fantastic indicator of just how much value he holds and just how much he's improved as a player as well. When he started out his first season, he had just a 0.3 WAR, but that has risen all the way to where it currently sits at 5.4 for the year for 2025. And it's no surprise that many on the worldwide interweb are not just calling him on track to be the greatest shortstop in franchise history, which is no small feat when you think about what the likes of Stephen Drew, Nick Ahmed, or Tony Womack accomplished individually during their time in the desert. But I don't remember any of those guys hitting a grand slam for their first career homer. And, a bit of trivia for you, bonus points if you can name who that grand slam for Geraldo Perdomo's first career home run was off of without Googling it. I'll give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer is Jared Solomon on the Cincinnati Reds. But that short trip down memory lane aside, let's go back to the present. Geraldo right now is on track for the most well-rounded offensive campaign any Diamondback shortstop has ever put together. 23 stolen bases, a 393 OPB, clear above any historical competition, and with a 4-year contract extension already secured, he's got plenty of time to keep that franchise charge going. But do we now have to ask an even bigger question? Is he the best shortstop in baseball? Now, that's very controversial, especially given the fact that he plays for what is admittedly not a huge market team in the Diamondbacks and isn't one of the, the superstars who's getting shouts to be, cover of MLB The Show this. brand ambassador globally, that. But let's break down some numbers. Amongst qualified position players, only Corey Seager and Bobby Witt have a better OPS, whereas Bo Bichette, Trey Turner, and Bobby Witt are the only ones with more hits. But Geraldo Perdomo clears all of them in both RBI and OPB. And while Jerry's explosion of power, hitting a career-high 15 homers, isn't exactly huge numbers, it represents a colossal impact on a team that's lost its two mainstay power bats. And that's before you get into, defensive metrics where we've always known he's elite. The fact that he can, bunt effectively, he can draw walks. I've not seen a player since I've started following baseball draw more walks than Geraldo Perdomo, especially when it comes to, unintentional walks. I've seen, the likes of Otani and Judge get walked multiple times whenever they're shoved down our throats on MLB Network. But Geraldo Perdomo always seems capable of coming in, whether he's, in the leadoff spot, whether he's batting second or third, or whether he's, on the sort of the flip over number 9 hole, which is where I saw most of him last year. He's always capable of drawing a walk, getting on base, and being representative of an extra run scored when you can bring up some of the higher slugging guys in the lineup too. That's before we think about the fact that, he's got elite defense, and he's finally got a nickname. He's become known in the fandom as Frogdomo. That's, of course, based on his quote that he's cold-blooded like a frog. I don't really know where that one came from, but we'll run with it. Frogdomo has outperformed every prediction on most of the major prediction sites and knowledge sites in baseball this year, and his only real competition for MVP in the number 6 spot is Francisco Lindor. Of course, somewhat of a celebrity, I'm going to say. I'll be delicate about how I talk about Mets players, because I know Mets fans will come for me if I don't. But yeah, he's the guy who really pipped Domo for that All-Star National League shortstop spot several times in a row at various points. But his kind of a travesty, if I'm honest, because Lindor trails Jerry right now in WAR, hits, RBI, batting average, OPB, OPS, and OPS plus. And Geraldo is 10th overall in National League MVP predictions. That's not 10th overall National League shortstops. That's the whole league MVP. 10th. So I won't outright tell you that he is the best shortstop in baseball, because the last thing I want to do is have thousands of fans of a bunch of other teams like yelling Bobby Witt this, Ellie De La Cruz that, Corey Seager this, Trey Turner that. But if you go and watch some Diamondbacks baseball, especially when Jerry is operating in an effective leadoff spot, you go watch that and you can make up your own mind. Now, Perdomo's breakout season comes really right when the D-backs needed productive boots filled, but perhaps more critical was been the need to reinforce a beleaguered and blow-up prone bullpen. By now, you're probably sick of hearing the fact that nobody has more blown saves in the National League than the Diamondbacks at 25. And the man with most of those, which is 11 earned by Shelby Miller, is of course now at the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, when you factor in the injuries to Justin Martinez, AJ Puck, Kevin Ginkel, Dre Jameson, and the almost healthy now Ryan Thompson, it was obvious that the Diamondbacks needed bullpen arms, but more notably a reliable late inning / closing pitcher. And that's where Andrew Saalfrank has entered the equation. We've seen glimpses of greatness from him before. He, of course, made 10 appearances 2023, where in 10 regular season innings pitched, he gave up only 7 hits and no earned runs before 11 postseason appearances, accumulating a 3.18 ERA, which was not bad for a rookie. We all know the details of how he ran afoul of MLB's no gambling policy, albeit while at low A level and clearly with no insider knowledge, which, of course, has earned him a 1-year suspension he's just returned from. He's come back from that just after the midway point of the year. Hopefully, that's with a clearer head and the support needed to move away from what is an addiction that, in my opinion, the sports governing bodies enable far too much. We, of course, see ads for gambling every 5 seconds at the ballpark, on TV, and on podcasts. But Saalfrank is back, and that's the important thing. And he has cracked on without a look over his shoulder after coming back pretty much straight into an assignment at AAA Reno. He didn't spend very much time in the complex league whatsoever. And less than a month later, he's been called up back to the majors into the Diamondbacks pen, and he's got 3 out of 4 save opportunities successfully and has become very quickly a go-to guy that seemingly ends the D-backs closing pitcher procession with 15 different players picking up a save this year, now 16 as of today, of course, with Taylor Rashi, out of the 21 tasked in those situations, which is the most in the majors. As I go to record this, he has a 1.35 ERA in 20 innings across 19 games, with career highs of 14 Ks so far across the season and an opponent 183 batting average against, and has also picked up his first career win along the way. Now, looking kind of further into the future than just this year, he likely won't retain that role when the likes of J. Mart, Puck, Ginkel return, but he does represent a very different lefty option for the pen when you compare him to somebody like Jalen Beeks or AJ Puck. Torrey seemingly will have a bit of a dilemma on his hands there, but it seems plenty worth it to me to keep Saalfrank around. He's not raw or very much untested now, and he's also 28 years of age, so he's not going to come across as super young and inexperienced. He seems to have been unaffected by some of the struggles of his bullpen compatriots right now. So the likes of John Curtis, Jake Woodford, and Juan Burgos have all seen their names called on the bullpen phone to mix results recently, and of course last night with Juan Murillo coming in and having a pretty torrid time of it, who's visibly upset in the dugout and, of course, has been sent down to Reno this morning. But that saw a corresponding move today with Taylor Rashi called back up, who's, if you're a fan of AAA Reno, you'll have seen quite a lot of Taylor Rashi, but it was Nabil Krismat tasked with the start. He was relieved by Jalen Beeks, but then Taylor Rashi, who's wasn't going to be the subject of focus of this podcast when I sat down to think about what I was going to talk about, but we're going to talk about him a lot more now. What a performance today. Came in, back-to-back strikeouts of Vaughn and Collins, came in clutch in the 7th inning when Milwaukee had the tying runs aboard at first and second, the score 6-4 at the time. He delivered a 1-2-3 8th inning, and I really liked what we saw of the former San Francisco Giants man. He's got a deceptive kind of behind-the-ear delivery, was how Steve was describing it on the broadcast. He really hides the ball till it goes behind his back, and then it very vertical comes back over the top of the shoulder, hiding behind the ear. And the way that we've talked about it happening is it makes a 90-mile-an-hour fastball look a lot more like a 94, 95. And then he has a split-finger offering that, when he's not spiking it at least, had some really solid effects, especially on the likes of Bryce Terang, who represented a very difficult out to get at times today. But, you know, Rashi managed it. He was left in for the 9th, which seemed to be a bit of a unnecessarily nerve-jangling one of a decision by Torrey. But of course, John Curtis was really the only guy left after using quite a lot of bullpen arms through this series, despite a very good performance yesterday from Ryan Nelson to go deep into the game. So we sort of had no choice, but they left Rashi in, and man, did he put in another outstanding inning, which included the final out off of a pinch hitter in Yelich, who of course came in, immediately electrified the fans, had a fantastic season. He's really one of the main guys over there in Milwaukee. They were resting him for the final game of the series. They put him in as a pinch hitter. A home run would have been a walk-off, but yeah, Rashi got the out, and that's pretty awesome to see for somebody who's making their MLB debut, who of course had that MLB debut patch on his sleeve, so that's going to become presumably one of the chase parts of top Series 1 flagship baseball next year. I think it's going to be one of those cards that, you know, after a debut that stellar, that you got to give it back to the player, sell it back to the player, work out a deal there. I'll probably rip way more cards than is probably healthy. We've talked about maybe gambling being an addiction on this show, but man, am I not over mine, so maybe that's pretty hypocritical there. But this episode was going to be me talking about Andrew Saalfrank and how impressive he's been and how good it is to have him in the organization. And it was going to have, you know, a very legal focused thumbnail. It was going to be, you know, Better Call Saul and really be riffing off of that. But since we're talking about Arizona Diamondbacks baseball and Arizona specifically, and yes, I'll acknowledge that the guys over at PHNX have already beaten me to it, but maybe Call Rashi, riffing off of Call Rafi, should be the legal pun for the day and thumbnail of the title of the episode instead. And after today, he has more than earned it. It was a pretty good performance all round from most of the players, but 3 innings pitched, 3 Ks and a save in a really tough spot for Taylor Rashi. Yeah, that's pretty awesome to see. Overall, that finishing line speaks for itself, but 62 pitches, 3 innings save against the best team in baseball, statistically speaking. I think that's more than just, a round of beers on the plane over to LA. I think that's, I don't know, what would you do for a pitcher in that situation? Are there any baseball traditions I don't know about? Chime off in the comments about that. But if that was something that happened in football, that would be, pitch invasion. That would be, swapping shirts, congratulating everyone, going a little bit wild. And I know that, this is the regular season and there's still quite a lot of baseball to play as the Diamondbacks chase the postseason. But I would love to see Taylor Rashi get the plaudits that he deserves, not just on social media, but let's really give him a good pat on the back when he gets back to Arizona and Chase Field as well. Ultimately, that meant the D-backs picked up the split versus baseball's best team in the Milwaukee Brewers. No small feat for the Diamondbacks team that obviously have traded away so much against a team set to have their first 100-win season in franchise history. It puts the form record at 66 and 69 right now, headed to Los Angeles, where we'll see a roster move as Pavin Smith is likely headed to the IL with that muscle strain in his leg. Leaves kind of first baseman up in the air a little bit. We'll, of course, got Tyler Locklear, whose struggles behind the plate continue, and probably, if Pavin was still fit, might have seen a move down to Reno just to sort his swing out a bit, because, man, he really does swing at everything, and I was unfortunate to see his home run get robbed today, because that would have been a 2 RBI home run that really, I imagine, probably would have given him some confidence, but maybe we'll see someone like, Ildemaro Vargas or perhaps James McCann going in at first base as well, since the DFA of Tristan English, and RIP to the D-backs jersey with English on the back, which would have been absolutely perfect for myself as far as things to have in a collection go. That's pretty perfect for myself. And then, of course, for J-Mart Enthusiast on X as well, who's a guy also based in the UK. I have plenty of good conversations with, and we talked about that at the time. Like, we could get a jersey that just says English on the back, and it wouldn't be us being ridiculously nationalistic and right-wing coded, which is a big ick, and we didn't want to go there. But the burning question that I will cover now as we get towards the end of the show, and before I take my trip in a couple of weeks to cover yet more Great Britain baseball at the Euros in Rotterdam, is very simple. Can the Diamondbacks still make the playoffs? Now, I'd like to think we have a reputation of being pretty optimistic on this show, and I would forgive you for thinking that that's either often misguided or happy-go-lucky, but despite the big soft sell at the deadline, I think we've replaced well where we have to. We've brought up the right guys in some cases, we've got good depth, and more importantly, we don't have that much left to lose this year. I think after that trade deadline, people are saying, yeah, well, that's the season done. Gino's gone, Naylor's gone. So, what's the point in still having a go, still fighting? But the D-backs are still fighting. Torey Lovello has already said, and I said this last week, that until there's that E and we're mathematically eliminated, until there's that E next to our name, we're going to keep playing, and we're going to keep playing like a team that believes it can make the playoffs. And I like to hear that. That's the kind of never say die fighting talk that I think this team and this fans deserve to hear from the manager. But there's a few interesting stats that I like that work in our favor as well. And the first one is that through August, and admittedly this is with Seattle's game today not yet having concluded, but through August, aka since the deadline, but Blaze Alexander and the man he replaced at third base, Eugenio Suarez, have the same amount of home runs as 6. We've also seen signs of recovery to classic milkman form from Zach Gallen. It's not, exactly where we'd want it to be, but it's an improvement for sure, and we covered this last week. Ryan Nelson now has very much legitimate shouts of ace status with an eye on 2026 based on his current pitching. He's up to 80 rated and a gold pitcher in MLB The Show for fans of the gaming world. And both Nabil Krismet and Anthony Descalfani have been absolutely fine. Not electric, but far from liability, coming in as fill-in number 5 starters in the rotation. And even Erod, who has been less than stellar since his arrival in a Diamondbacks jersey, is turning in more foundationally solid performances. So if the pitching, while being far from perfect, is improving, it only leaves some adjustments needed in the offensive department before we can mount a charge. And with the kind of form that the aforementioned Geraldo Perdomo is in, alongside the monthly RBI leader in all of baseball, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who picked up career hit number 900 today, congratulations to him, as well as somebody like Alec Thomas, who had a very strong series, picking up 7 hits in Milwaukee. It's never going to be perfect, but it's far from doom and gloom, despite the Diamondbacks being outsiders and despite what social media, especially some accounts, I'm not going to mention any names, but some accounts on social media will tell you Diamondbacks are rubbish and everything's terrible and no one deserves to keep their job. But that's all the more reason to follow our pages on the socials instead. We are, of course, at Dbacks Podcast on IG and on X. And you can also keep up with my adventures of being a baseball fan in England on the TikTok, which is at Dbacks, where most recently I got to chat with Great Britain women's baseball gold medalists Jess Vernon and Laura Harai. So if you haven't seen that episode already, make sure you give it a watch or a listen, because we had a great conversation about all sorts of stuff. As I said earlier in the episode, I'm going to be back off into Europe to go and see some more Great Britain baseball as the senior men's team take on all-comers in Rotterdam at the Euros. They were silver medalists last time. We're going to see if they can continue the hot streak of gold medals for Great Britain in that. I'll be delighted to be covering that, and if you're lucky, I might just bring some exclusive behind-the-scenes content that you won't see anywhere else from that tournament, to be found on the GB Baseball social pages as well as on my own pages. But we're going to wrap the episode up there. As always, I want to say thank you very much for listening / watching. Please remember to follow, subscribe, like, wherever it is that you're tuning into the show. Keep the faith, Diamondbacks fans. Thank you very much for listening.